Greetings and welcome to Live from Caid. Tonight's guest is the Society Siege Weapons Marshal, the Honorable Lord Sean O'Neill. And featuring a live performance by the impeccable Baron Bruce Draconarius. Me? Well, batten down your hatches, folks, because I'm your announcer, Master Bjorn of the Northern Sea. And here's your host, Master Laertes McBride.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us again. Sorry for the little confusion on the links. A little problem with the system over the weekend, and I had to republish it. So hopefully you made it over here where we're live this evening. So thank you for joining us. I really don't have much to add. We had that whole big ascension ceremony. That's like Babylon 5. And we talked about that last week. So you know what? Let's just go ahead and bring in my good friend Bjorn. Bjorn, hi Bjorn, how are you?
Doing well, thank you so much.
I hope you had a good week.
I think weeks are going to be had, especially starting tomorrow. I think we're going to have a great time. I know that we kept our Christmas decorations up just for tomorrow. So,
oh yes, that's true. So what I wanted to talk to you about, because it's everywhere, and I think Caid could lead the way with sea shanties. Sea shanties are now in the zeitgeist thanks to TikTok, and they seem to be everywhere. So have you noticed the sea shanty phase that's going on?
I have, and several of my friends have been somewhat pestering me to sort of lay down multiple tracks for that kind of a thing. I know that I'm can't say anything right now, but I have every intention of getting with a couple of our former performance guests on this show and doing some multi-track recordings and throwing some of that out there just because sea shanties. How long have we known about them?
That's true. I mean, that's what I was thinking. There's even households that are built around sea shanties. So it's not like it's new for us, but who knew? It's like back in the 90s when Gregorian chants were actually charting on the radio chart, right?
Yes, only from a mind of enigma. I remember that distinctly.
So yeah, that should be the next videos between the SCA kingdoms while we're in shutdown is sea shanties.
I think that'd be fantastic. As a matter of fact, we'll say it here first. The gauntlet is dropped. All 20 kingdoms, live from Caid, telling you now, get those sea shanties together. Remember, TikTok has a time limit, but get on it. I have faith in you. I can already tell Her Excellency Brianna has got some stuff down there for us to take a look at. So I'm very excited to see what people are doing.
I enjoyed the sea shanty version of All Star by Smash Mouth. You should check that out if you haven't seen it. It's quite amusing. So
I'll have to check that one out.
So yes. Oh, see, and I just got pooped on for saying a modern song, but oh well. Anyway, so that's all I got. Is I was just fascinated that sea shanties are back. So, what do you have for our arts and sciences this week?
Well, we have two things that we're going to talk about today. One of the ones that I'm really, really happy with. As a matter of fact, I have to confess that this really was an unbelievable treasure that we were able to get a hold of. So there are so many things that we can find online now, partly because of the pandemic, partly because there's more to see and more has been digitally placed online than ever before. And then there's just those hidden gems that have been around for quite some time, and they're only just now coming to our attention. The first one that I wanted to talk about is the Ottoman History Podcast. The Ottoman History Podcast has been around for almost 10 years now. It was a little experiment by some folks from tiny little places like Harvard University and Boğaziçi University, which was the Bosphorus University, the Turkish university in Turkey, along with a couple of people in like Columbia, University of Virginia, SOAS in London. And they decided that they were going to get together and explore all of the more accessible information that was out there about the history of modern Middle East, the Islamic world from the beginning until today. And they have episodes that, as you might guess, for something that's been around since March of 2011, they have a simply unbelievable wealth of knowledge. Everything from, hey, what exactly was the financial and culinary situations around the Tigris and Euphrates to so what do we do in the Bosphorus? What was it like on the Black Sea at this point and this point and this point? And their lecturers and people that are working on their doctorates, and there are professors who all come in and work uh, on this podcast, and they have information that is in English. They have Turkish information, and it is just truly fantastic. Those people who have interest in this information, this is simply, there's nothing like it anywhere else online. And the thing is, it's been here for almost a decade. So, like I said, that's the great thing about being here, being sequestered. So many terrible things have occurred over this last year, but by people turning inward and looking for information, since they just can't go to the library, they just can't go um, to find some of these documents anywhere, they have found this podcast, and it is truly amazing. Just the bibliographies alone is something that would, a series of resources that those of you that have the kind of change to where you're thinking, I think I'm going to order some of this stuff on Amazon. Well, I hope you saved up your Christmas money, because there's a lot of fantastic stuff there. The second thing that I wanted to talk about is a special YouTube video that was put out by the British Museum just not more than about 4 or 5 days ago. Now, yes, we have talked about the British Museum before, and so I know it seems as if I'm sort of retreading information that we've already covered, but this is a very special YouTube video. It is 18 minutes and 37 seconds long, and it is an extremely detailed deep dive into the Sutton Hoo helmet. So Dr. Sue, who is the curator at the British Museum on those particular antiquities for the Anglo-Saxon time, she goes into intricate detail, not only about the information of the burial itself, some of the finds that were found along with the helmet, why the helmet is in the pieces that it is in, and also the numerous attempts that have been made since the late 30s when it was initially discovered in the north of England, why it was put together the way it was originally and why it is in the condition it is in now, plus the reproduction. But when I tell you that it is a deep dive, I was very fortunate this last year, well, not 2020, nothing really happened then, but the previous year to actually be in the UK. And I was at the British Museum, and I was as close to that particular helmet as a person can get without leaving smudges on the plexiglass. And even then, taking pictures without flash, getting as close as I could, even taking a few sketches, I did not notice the details that Dr. Sue was able to bring forth with this video. It is fantastic. She not only talks about the structural integrity of the helmet itself and what our modern notions are about whether or not it actually would have been used in a combat situation, to some of the more, perhaps not spiritual, but some of the more metaphysical things that might have gone on with the helm, and what some of the imagery meant and the symbolism within the piece. One particular note that I think is really fascinating is the garnets that were on one eye were underlined with a gold foil so that they would pop when hit with light. But on the other eye, they were not. So when the light shone directly at the helm, one eye would be illuminated and one would be cast in shadow, which they felt might have been an homage to Woden or Odin. And that's just information that when you're just looking at the helm itself, you really can't tell. Even the reproduction doesn't go into that much detail because this is information that's only just now being made aware to us. So I cannot even begin to tell you how fascinating the video was. I think that if you have any interest whatsoever in Anglo-Saxon works, I think you should definitely give this one a look. It was splendid. So those are the two things I wanted to talk about. I know they are definitely disparate looks. Islamic Ottoman Empire and our Anglo-Saxon Empire or rather the kingdoms of the Anglo-Saxons in England. But we are finding so many amazing things, both things that have been around for almost a decade, and then a new video that was less than a week old. And you never know what's going to be online. And I was really, really happy to be able to find both of these things and bring them to you today.
Okay, so Dr. Sue and the Sutton Who helmet sounds like a sequel to Grinch. Right?
Possibly. And by the way, just so you know, she is the same person that talks about the Anglo-Saxon swords. That's a particular specialty of hers. And she made one out of foam, and she let people in England name her sword, kind of like that Bodie McBoatface thing they did in England. Mm-hmm. And so the name of her sword, Flexcalibur.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And then the other thing on the Ottoman History podcast, my favorite episode is when they talk about the Dick Van Dyke Show Ottoman and everything. That was my favorite.
I think that was the beginning of the collapse of the Ottoman.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, now it's time to transition into who our guest is for this evening. Who are we going to be speaking with?
We have the Society Siege Weapons Marshal, and it is His Lordship Sean O'Neill, who is going to be talking to us about that not always used, but always really enjoyed when seen aspect of war and melee scenarios in the SCA combat, a siege weaponry.
Right. And as I always say, trebuchets are cool. So let's go ahead and bring him on. So, and all the way from Meridies, look who we have. Hello, Your Lordship.
Hey.
How are you?
Doing well, doing well.
So you're joining us from where?
I live in actually the Birmingham area in Alabama, which is in Meridies. Yeah.
Okay, so it's a little bit later for you out there.
Deal.
So you're the what? Deputy Society Siege Weapons Marshal. Is that the way it is?
Yes. Correct. Yes.
And so you report to the Society Marshal?
I do.
Right. So
I report directly to him.
Great. Yes. So you basically kind of like we had Rosie on here to talk about her position as a deputy for rapier. You do the same thing, but for everything that falls into the category of siege weapons, correct?
That's correct.
So how would you define that per se? I mean, what is considered a siege weapon?
Well, what is considered a siege weapon? Pretty much anything that's going to, fling a projectile which would, simulate something much bigger. In period. Matter of fact, you've got two different types of siege engines. They're classified as Type A and Type B. Your Type A engines are your big stuff, like a Warwolf, for example. And those will, simulate throwing, the huge 250-pound rocks and things like that. Then you have Class B weapons, which are your smaller trebuchets. They can be counterweight. They can be human powered. and Ballista, which hopefully everyone's familiar with, that shoot the 4-foot bolts.
Right. So Ballista is basically a big ass crossbow, right?
I was just going to say, with siege weapons, depending on the type, you can throw standard, what they call standard munitions, which would be, for example, like single tennis balls, and those would represent smaller rocks, and you can throw a bunch of them. In a smaller trebuchet, for example, you can throw up to 5. You can throw up to 20 with a Class A, and those basically follow archery rules. You can block those with your shield, things like that. But regular siege, Class A ammo or Class B ammo, if that hits you, you're done.
Right.
Because the Class A's, you'd just be a greasy spot, getting hit with a 250-pound rock, and even the Class B ammo, you're talking about the large, grapefruit and bigger size rocks, which would still be a problem. Ballista bolts, it would go through your shield, your arm, you, and then the guy behind you. So that's one of the beauties of throwing siege weapons is nobody can block it. If they do, they're still done.
So we'll get into details. But so would you say that the siege weaponry there's a program in basically every kingdom? And is it fairly equally distributed, or would you say there's more active in some areas opposed to others?
Yes, there's some kingdoms that actually don't have hardly any siege at all, and there's some that really enjoy it. So it does kind of vary.
And basically, you see them at the big inter-kingdom events, correct?
Yes, absolutely. My main war is Gulf Wars.
Right.
So I'm usually there every year because it's close to me. Looking forward to Precinct coming up. I'm going to do my best to make it.
Right. I think everyone's looking forward to Precinct coming up because King of the last year.
Yeah.
So, okay. So what is, other than the mechanics, what's the advantage of a trebuchet versus a catapult?
Well, a trebuchet, usually they have a long arm. They have a counterweight. That counterweight can be people, or it can be just a fixed weight. And usually it rotates around with the counterweight with a large sling. Catapults usually have a fixed arm, and they only move, say, 90 degrees or less. And you can have stuff like mangonels, which is what most people think of when they think catapult. It's an arm with a big basket on it, to throw rocks. And you also had, if you remember the first few minutes of Gladiator, when they were doing the big fight at the beginning, they had Roman onagers, which is basically the same machine, but it has a sling on it.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
See, I do all my research through movies, so I know exactly what you're talking about. I just thinking back over the wars and stuff I've been at, I don't think I could picture seeing a catapult anywhere. There's almost always trebuchets.
Well, yeah, they're big, they're heavy, and sometimes tough to move around.
Right.
And you really have to build those tough, because those things do take a beating. That's actually how the onager got its name, because when that arm flipped up and hit the big pad, it would jump. And onager basically just means wild donkey. They would buck up from the impact, and like I said, you really have to build those tough, because that arm does take a beating. So it's a lot easier to cock and shoot trebuchets, especially the human type, human powered, and ballista and stuff like that.
So in your position on the society level, Have you seen any like experimental programs or something unusual proposed that people want to use? Could you tell about that?
Yes, periodically, we'll get somebody that wants to use a new type engine, and we actually do have an experiment going on, and it's target siege, where we actually use live bolts, and we're shooting at targets. We're trying to get that going right now, and we're going to try to start sharing the archery ranges with those folks, and maybe schedule a time for us to bring engines up and things like that. We've got a few kingdoms coming in and working on that experiment. The guys from Antier are really running with the target siege experiment.
Right.
So hats off to them.
Well,
they're doing a great job.
Up there, there's not a lot of stuff to hit if you miss. So
Well, yeah, that's why we wanted to basically share archery ranges. Already have a pre-done range, with plenty of area behind it, so we can do it as safely as possible.
Now, much like it is for armored combat and rapier and such, each kingdom has its own setup for authorizations to be able to participate in that function. So, is there if you wanted to get on a crew or something, is there like a society level guidelines in order to do that?
As far as just being authorized, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we do have a Society Siege handbook that goes through that. If you're a siege engineer in one kingdom, then you can participate with other kingdoms. So that part's not an issue. And there are a few differences as far as during the authorizations. For example, in Meridies, one of the things we do is we will actually shoot you with the ballista at minimum range, just so you know what you're going to be doing to everybody else.
Well, I think you actually seen some pictures about that, right?
I did. These are from Gulf Wars, and actually at Gulf Wars, someone in the crew has to be willing to take a shot from their own engine.
Smart.
And these pictures, are people, so you can tell the bolts flexed. Right there. There's another guy that's just about to hit him.
He looks really excited about it too.
Yeah, a lot of people are. But like I said, that's matter of fact, that's me shooting somebody because hey, we need to authorize this machine, but I'm the only one here right now. Well, fine. I'll be happy to shoot you as part of it.
Well, what's the closest distance you could actually shoot someone with one of those?
30 feet. If they get any closer than 30 feet, you cannot shoot them.
Okay. Well, I'll keep that in mind.
Mm-hmm.
And then,
and see that guy took one to the face mask. So you can see his head snapping back a little bit.
Well, see, so if you've had a bad day having to authorize people or being a marshal in the field, I mean, that must be very satisfying.
Well, it's a lot of fun, actually. Watching the engines. I've got plenty of stories, from wars and things like that.
Well, speaking of which, so Gulf Wars, before we get into that, so when you got into the SA, did you dive straight into siege weapons, or did you get involved through some other avenue?
Through another avenue. A friend of mine got me involved, and I heavy fought for years. And my oldest brother got involved, and he is actually, we lost him a handful of years ago, but he was an amputee, and I built my first ballista to get him out on the field with us, because being an amputee, he couldn't, run around the field and chase people. And he very, very much enjoyed it. And I'm like, wow, this is so much fun. One of my bylines is shooting someone with a 4-foot stick never gets old. And it doesn't. And he did that a lot. It was a lot of fun.
Well, that's awesome that you found your passion by helping out your brother, so he could be involved and sharing the fun. That's fantastic.
Oh,
So,
yeah. That was good times. Yes.
do you have any of your favorite stories regarding siege weapons from like Gulf Wars?
Well, just a funny one with my brother. Way back when, before they really started separating, if you was a heavy, you was by default a siege engineer, and then they separated it. And actually, my brother was the first siege engineer only authorization in Meridies. So that was kind of cool.
That's awesome.
And yeah, it was Sir Connell that did his authorization, and he was doing his armor check. And it's a funny story because he was feeling down his leg, and he got a hold of his prosthetic, which is just a bar, and his hands went like this, and he was speechless. He was it's all good. Don't worry about it.
You need to work out. It's very thin.
Yeah.
So when I was at Gulf Wars, so many years ago, when Edric and Batista were on the throne, I think it was Gulf Wars 10, and I was standing there watching the armored combat at the castle because I noticed at the time. So it's kind of basically Anstiora versus Trimaris, right? So Anstiora really likes the Ballistras and the Trebuchets, and they would set up rings both inside and out and volley shot the whole time. And Trimaris really likes the boarding rams. It's cool.
Yes.
So I'm sitting there watching them shoot the trebuchets and reloading and shooting them off. And they're running through, and the Austrian King's about halfway up the battlefield, and they load the trebuchet in front of me, and it goes off with a misfire. And instead of going up and over, it does a beeline and hits the guy right next to the Austrian King. And the king turns around, and to a T, everyone on that crew kind of, no, not us, just looked around like it wasn't their fault. It was fantastic to watch. But when Anstiora would be inside the castle walls, and they would call Leon, you would just see the volleys coming across, and it was just so cool to watch. That's my favorite thing.
It is fun. It really is.
So,
they can backfire. They can throw, if you have a sling problem or something to that effect. Yeah, they can throw straight back just as good as they can throw forward. So,
so someone asked how heavy the ammo is that you're flinging, for like the sack of tennis balls, or I saw like taped together tennis balls that they kind of look like a rock that I've seen.
Yes, 4 of them. Yes.
About how much do those weigh? Right.
Most of your 4 tennis ball siege rocks, I said it's 4 tennis balls. They usually weigh about half a pound. Your maximum weight for any siege ammo is 1 pound, and that's for safety. Siege engines have to be able to throw ammo at least 40 yards, but not over 80. You was going back to the minimum range, for example, on that ballista shot. If I can sling a 1 pound bolt 80 yards, do you really want to stand point blank and take a shot from it?
No, that's why I was wondering.
So we have the minimum ranges, we have the maximum weights, and that's for safety.
So before I toss this over to Bjorn, I did have one more question. Oh my gosh, what was? So have you ever had to stop people from trying to launch unauthorized type of ammo?
That is a funny story. At Gulf Wars years and years ago, at the Known World party, someone forgot to remove their string from their ballista, and there was a guy over there with a beer bottle in the track, and he was pulling back on that string for all he was worth, trying to see how far he could sling a beer bottle. Luckily, I caught that in time and stopped it. That would not have been fun at all.
No, not good at all. At this point is when I turn it over to Bjorn, and he's going to ask much better questions. So let me step out for a moment. He'll be right here.
Hey.
Good to see you again, Your Lordship. One of the things that you had brought up was point blank range being 30 feet or 10 yards. As I recall, with siege weaponry, combat cannot take place any closer than 5 feet. Is that correct? From the actual structure?
Yes. That's for everybody's safety. Yes.
So in other words, from the 10 yards, from 30 feet until 5 feet, so in that 25-foot range, the siege engineers are pretty much at the mercy of whoever's guarding them. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's why a lot of siege engineers like, to have some fighters around just for that very purpose. There's a lot of siege engineers that are also heavies, and they can, as long as the machine is not, is safe, it's not cocked or anything like that, then they can grab sword and shield and defend the engine. And you can also kill an engine, and I'll put that.
That was actually my next question. Yes.
And you'd be surprised. There's a lot of people that don't know how to do that. The safe way to do it is you lay your weapon on the machine. Don't hit it. You just lay your sword on the machine and just yell for everybody to hear, "This machine is dead." And then you can go on. A lot of people will, for example, they'll leave the machine alone and they'll kill the engineers. Well, more engineers can come, take up and use that machine.
Now, that was one of the things that the last time I fought at Gulf Wars, since we're talking Gulf War stories, we got to be qualified for siege weaponry, and we would go and kill the engineers, but not, for us it was, this weapon is destroyed, is what we would have to say, or back then.
This engine is dead, this weapon is destroyed.
And it was on a similar way with death from behind in a war scenario, sort of.
Very
and
similar.
Then we would try and turn it around to use it as long as it wasn't facing any members of the populace or the people that were viewing. If there was a certain range, a certain arc that we could follow. But as I recall, that was one of the things that at the time the Meridian general was quite fond of, depending upon whose side we were fighting with, whether we were Draconarius or Anciora, by taking out their siege engineers and then trying to, take over their siege weapon rather than destroy it. So that is something that can also still be done within the rules?
Yes, it's actually in the rules. As long as the owner of the machine is cool with it, then yes, you can take over a machine and use it. And usually either the owner of the machine or one of the crew, even though they're dead, will actually stay there to make sure that everybody's safe operating it, and if necessary to coach them through it.
That makes sense. The last question I have is now, just like with archery, after the war scenario for that particular part of the war takes place, and you glean crossbow bolts and arrows and the like, they are all inspected just to make sure that everything is going to be safe, so it can be launched again from whatever. Whether it's a bow or a crossbow. How exactly does the gleaning take place for siege weaponry?
Basically the same. We'll pick up everything. The 4 tennis ball rocks, unless the duct tape is really torn on them or stuff like that, they're good to go again. And usually you inspect the head on a ballista bolt and make sure that you haven't had a blowout, because the heads are made from 3 inches of pool noodle. So you just want to make sure there's not a blowout or something like that, and then it's safe to use again.
The ballista bolts, are those made from golf tubes?
No, not anymore. The we actually use the black Soliflex that you see used in a lot of other weapons in the SCA. There's two types of Soliflex. There's black Soliflex and yellow Soliflex. A lot of people now are actually using the yellow Soliflex because they don't have to color it or put some kind of vinyl tape or duct tape on the black ones to make them yellow. Because your siege ammo has to be at least 70% yellow to differentiate it from everything else.
Oh, excellent. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Sure.
The last thing I wanted to talk about before we kick it back over to Laertes and your game is we all have our Gulf Wars memory of the same thing. And
Okay.
I'm going to kick this one to you. When was the first time you saw the Da Vinci Tank?
The first time I saw it, I was not the siege marshal at that time. So the first time I saw it was actually as they was bringing it to the field, and they had combat archers in it. That was cool. That was a really, really cool thing.
It was amazing.
So you saw that?
Oh yeah, I saw the very first one before they had the more rigid sides, and they made the mistake of having it on the far end of the field with that slope towards the castle, and they didn't know that it was going to start moving faster than they were pushing, and you end up hearing a lot of hold, but it was all coming from inside the tank because they were trying to slow down.
They're trying to stop it. That's funny.
And it would have been worse if it had the rigid side, since most of that was just canvas then. But yeah, the most recent ones are just unbelievably gorgeous. And that one on that picture is they did a great job with it. Absolutely. Well, thank you so very much. I really appreciate it, and I'm glad you were able to bring those pictures because we don't often see those sorts of siege weapons out here as much, and so we have something out here called the Crack, which is the Caid and Royal Artillery Corps, and they do a lot of. We have a lot of towers out here, and I know that towers have to have specific requirements. Like I think it's every 4 feet has to hold at least 300 pounds.
That's correct.
And they have to have a certain footprint, and there's just so much. I know that a lot of people spend a lot of money on their armor, but the amount of funding that goes into making a safe and effective siege tower can't be understated.
No, not at all. And the Da Vinci Tank was, just one of a lot of creative stuff. Was you there the year that Trebuchet brought the siege boat?
No. I did not get a chance to see the siege boat.
That was made with a boat trailer and the steerable front end part from a golf cart, and then they built the boat up around that. And they when they brought it down for inspection, the king was laid back steering it because he used the back wheels to steer it. That was actually front end of a golf cart, and the queen was standing on the prow, just doing this queen thing, and they had 4 guys inside it, doing the Flintstone thing, pushing it along. And I was the siege marshal that year at Gulf Wars, and I thought, well, I've never authorized a boat before. So I just used the siege structure rules to make sure everything was okay. And there was actually, in the mouth of the dragon, there was a beer tap, and they went through Merchant's Row with that later on at night. But it was cool. And if you've been to Gulf Wars, you know about the town battle. There's a moat around the town battle. Well, they came up the moat in their siege boat.
Of course.
It was full of archers. And somebody, because I was marshaling at the time, somebody asked me, how do we kill that? I said, well, you don't have any other siege engines. You can't. We can't sink it? No. I said, you can kill everybody in it, but you can't sink the boat because you don't have any siege engines.
Well, that'll learn them.
Yeah, it did. But oh gosh, like I said, there's lots of stories I could talk for a long time, but I know you have a short window.
Well, I really do appreciate it, Your Lordship. Thank you so much. And those pictures are fantastic.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I said the pictures are fantastic.
Oh yeah, yes, absolutely. And like I said, it's been fun, and it is my pleasure to do it.
All right. Well, you're back with me. So,
Yeah.
So that's awesome. So this is the part of the show where the audience plays along to see if they're smarter than you. I mean, to have fun. And
that's not difficult. Go ahead.
So, hey, this week, what are we calling the game, Bjorn?
This evening's game is Welcome to the Party, pal.
All right. So you're the siege weapon marshal, and I thought, you know what? There's a lot of movies about sieges. You know, like Die Hard, trying to take back the place that the people are in, and so someone that always comes to mind for me talking about siege type of movies is Steven Seagal. So I have some movies here, and I'll give you the title of the movie. You can tell me whether Steven Seagal is in it or not, and then you'll get an extra point if you can tell me what is being held or what he has to reclaim from the bad guys. So, like, you know, Die Hard got to take the building back, right? So, okay, you got it. You got this one. Okay, so here we go. We'll start easy, and we'll go with we'll do this one. Executive Decision. Was Steven Seagal in Executive Decision?
Yes.
Oh, you're right. And what are they trying to take back?
Air Force One.
No, it's an airplane. No? Just a consumer airplane. Just a regular airplane.
I thought it was Air Force One.
No, that's Air Force One with Harrison Ford. But
okay.
Yeah, we'll give you airplane.
Okay.
And the main thing about that one is he died. Oh, spoilers! It's like 30-year-old spoilers. He dies in like the first 10 minutes. So you know, it's a good movie though. Kurt Russell. How about The Siege?
I remember that. The movie The Siege. Yes,
no,
he was in.
No, he's not in that one. No, that's Denzel Washington.
The Siege.
Yeah, and
Under Siege.
Oh, dude, you're jumping ahead. Okay, so.
Oh, sorry.
So The Siege with Denzel Washington. What's being held hostage in The Siege?
Isn't it a bank or something?
No, it's New York City. So, you know, go big or go home, right?
I'm thinking of a different Denzel movie. Okay.
Okay, so Under Siege, since you asked. So Under Siege is Steven Seagal, right?
Yes, he was in it. He was the main character, and that was on an aircraft carrier.
Yes. Okay, so so successful, he did Under Siege 2, Dark Terror.
One moment, please.
Yeah.
Just for clarification, Under Siege was not an aircraft carrier. It was the USS Missouri battleship.
Oh,
yes. You're absolutely right.
Yeah,
right. My comments are going to go ape.
So warship. Okay.
My bad. Yes, you're right. It was the Missouri.
So Under Siege 2, Dark Territory, what's being held?
I don't remember.
Oh, it's a train. It's a train. Huh? It's a choo-choo.
Okay. I did not remember.
So you only get 1 point for that. How about Assault on Precinct 13?
Well, obviously it's a Precinct 13, so it's a police precinct, I'm guessing. I don't know if I've seen that movie.
So is Steven Seagal in that one or not?
I don't think so.
You are correct. He is not in that one. Okay, and the last one is Submerged.
Does not ring a bell. I'm sorry.
Well, so you can guess. Is he 50-50? So is he in it or not?
I'm guessing Submerged, so I'm guessing a submarine.
Yeah, submarine. Duh.
But I don't know if Steven Seagal was in it or not.
So you have 50-50 chance. Roll the dice. What do you think?
I'll say no.
Oh, no, he was in that one. I've never heard of that one either. I mean,
okay.
Think about title. So you got a bunch of points. So congratulations. You can continue being the Siege Weapons Marshal. So, I don't know if that's a positive. I don't know if that's a positive or not.
I didn't hear what you said.
I said you can continue being the Siege Weapons Marshal because you know about Siege movies.
Yes. Yes. Well, if I didn't get enough points, then I guess they can dock my pay.
Yes, because I know you get a huge paycheck. But anyway, thank you so much for your time this evening. If someone wants to either take part in the experimental programs or has questions about building siege weapons or such, and of course, first stop shopping is your local kingdom. But
yes, absolutely.
But you're available and approachable too with any questions or comments or guidance, correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. Please first though, go ahead and go through your kingdom marshal.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, I'm available anytime.
Okay, along with anyone who was interested in the current experimental program, or if they have one, you work the chain. But at least everyone knows it's out there now. So.
Yes, absolutely.
All righty. Well, thank you again so much. I know it's a little bit later, so I appreciate you sticking around with us and telling stories and sharing it. Because honestly, I love siege weapons. They're so cool to watch.
Indeed.
Oh, they are cool.
So have a great rest of your evening. And hopefully I'll be able to make it out to Gulf Wars at some time again. And we can meet up.
Yes, I'm very much looking forward to meeting you.
Okie doke. Well, we'll see you later. Have a good evening.
You have a good evening.
Oh, I just cut him off. Okay, let's bring back Bjorn. Hi, Bjorn. That was cool.
I think siege weapons are so cool. The very first time I ever saw a siege thing of any kind, or a mass attack on fighters, was boiling oil. It was slit tennis balls with red and orange and yellow plastic streamers. They were slit so if you stepped on them, it wouldn't roll your ankle or anything. And they put them in baskets and they threw them down on top of people that tried to assault the main entries of the castle at Gulf Wars. And it was great because obviously it was just like thunk, 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 thunk. But these people, they were like, ah, and they would roll around on the ground and they'd have it was the funniest thing that, but it's not a res battle. You're gone for the rest of this scenario. Yeah, but I was burned alive. And they were all excited about it. You can't, it's just another way SCA is better.
Just embrace it, right? Go with it.
Embrace the burning pitch.
oh, pitch. Okay. Anyway, so next what? I didn't say anything. That's a different show you're thinking about. Who do we have coming next?
We have His Excellency Bruce Draconarius, a gentleman of the Laurel, of the Pelican, one of the great heralds of the Society, who is going to be performing for us this evening.
Oh, great.
The Bâton Vert.
Okay, so let me bring him in right now. Just one moment. He's been very patiently waiting in our luxurious green room.
Such as it is.
Hello, Master Bruce.
Hello, Master Laertes. How are you tonight?
I am fantastic. You look resplendent.
I thought for the occasion I should try to do my host's honor.
Oh, well, I figured you just dressed up for Bjorn. So,
isn't he a host?
That's true.
All right then. Don't give me grief.
Well, it's so good to see you. It's been a while.
And you.
So, Master Bruce, you've been in the SCA for a bit, right?
A fair bit. I joined just after Caid had become a kingdom.
Wow.
So, rocks were still hard, but dirt had just been invented. So we're working out very nicely now.
So how did you find the SCA?
Well, I found the SCA through a magical group at my college, believe it or not, and that and a science fiction club in the college next door. The college where I went to was Caltech, and the ratio at the time was 7 male undergraduates to every female undergraduate. So a lot of excursions went to Pasadena City College, which was right up the road, and which had a much more reasonable female-to-male ratio. And that is, in fact, where I met she who is my wife, Mistress Astra Christiana.
Wow, that's awesome. So when you got started, did you immediately start falling into the performing arts and service, or did you kind of wander, or what kind of hooked you in?
Kind of wandered at first, but it turns out that I'd been interested in coats of arms since I was a kid. And so I tended to naturally gravitate toward that. I enjoyed singing. I've always enjoyed singing. I would never have tried to characterize myself as a bard, but I do enjoy it. And every once in a while, I can get other people to enjoy when I do it. So,
well, hopefully that's true tonight, because otherwise, Bjorn has.
Oh, yes. Tonight, I do not come to you as a herald. Tonight, I come to you as a singer of songs about heralds.
So now that you mention it, what pieces are you going to perform for us this evening?
Well, I have two songs, one of which is very well known, but one of which, in my opinion, is not well known enough. It was written, I shudder to say it, like 30 years ago by Mistress Tangustel for Morgan Glassfrin, who is known in science fiction circles as Heather Rose Jones. It came out just as Kenneth Branagh's Henry V was in the theaters. And I think there are always these movies that, kind of solidify and gel our notion of what we want to be in the society. I know of at least one of our monarchs who wanted to be El Cid. But actually, he wanted to be Charlton Heston being El Cid, is what he really wanted. And I imagine there were more than one monarch who wanted to be Kenneth Branagh being Henry V. But for me, the notable person in that movie was Mountjoy the Herald. And evidently, I'm not alone in that, because the first song is called Mountjoy's Song, and it is sung from his point of view. So, shall I?
Yes, you shall. The floor is yours.
Merci beaucoup, monsieur. Mountjoy's Song by Heather Rose Jones. My tongue is not my own to praise or blame, who bear upon my breast the badge of France. I've watched the weary warriors in their dance, and seen the kings and princes at their game, and know that to our everlasting shame, this day was never lost by luck or chance. We trampled it beneath our proud advance, and left it on the field for him to claim. My masters missed the measure of this man who dares to wear the lilies as his own, dismissed him as a child who plays at war. But I have seen him as they never can, as noble on the march as on the throne, and they have never heard this leopard roar. My message brought to mind his younger days. The words I spoke were harsh with bitter scorn, and for those words all France today shall mourn, for we have seen how fierce a game he plays. My tongue is not my own to blame or praise, but I would not have seen it meekly borne, nor wish to hear upon that fateful morn an answer couched in bargains and delays. A leopard in a trap would look the same, no rest until the battle's lost or won, all pride and steel and fury at the cage. And yet he spoke me fair and asked my name, and gave me honor for a job well done, nor blamed the message bearer in his rage. My task to tell the tally of the dead. The brightest stars have fallen from our sky, and rain and blood have mingled where they lie, to make the very rivers run with red. Now let us lay them in their final bed, and let us sound no more the trumpet cry, but find the price a space of peace to buy, when all the words of honor have been said. My tongue is not my own to praise or blame, my service to the crown of France is sworn, my heart is given to my lord alone. and yet this much a conqueror may claim. Had fate conspired to have me English born, I would be proud to call their king my own.
Oh, that's wonderful. Very nice.
Thank you. It was written in the form of a Petrarchian sonnet and set to music that was written by her. So,
awesome.
And I do not think it has gotten nearly the attention that the song deserves, and I'm very pleased to publicize it a little bit more tonight.
That's great. And you have a second piece for us this evening.
I do have a second one, much lighter in tone, and everybody who's ever sat around a Herald's consultation table will have heard this one. It was written by Master Baldwin of Erebor, and it's called The Herald's Complaint. When I was just a pursuivant at Herald High, I studied with a conscience as the days went by. I listened to the lectures and took note of every phrase, and I gave my life to learning the correct heraldic ways. But when evening come and classes closed and midnight candles burnt, I would lie in bed and hearken back to all that I had learnt. And as I lay near Slumber's door beneath the candle's gleam, an eerie vision came to me, appearing in a dream. It was a dove displayed upon a billet, Chekior and gules, between a pair of cockatrices clad in motley like a fool's, their feathers each dimidiated, with a tree eradicated, limbed and fructed counter company. Beside the field of honor at a tournament, I was resting from my labors in the herald's tent, when my reverie was broken by a newly belted knight who had come for some assurance that his coat of arms was right. I sat him down and lectured him about simplicity, and shared with him the good advice that had been taught to me. My lord, he said, my thanks to thee, you really have been kind. Now let me tell you of the coat of arms I have in mind. I want a dove displayed upon a billet, Chekior and gules, between a pair of cockatrices clad in motley like a fool's, their feathers each dimidiated, with a tree eradicated, limbed and fructed counter company. Your blazon is impossible, was my response. It's so complex the college would reject it at the nonce. It breaks the rules of heraldry, it can't be done, you see. Besides, the arms you've blazoned have been registered to me. I have a dove displayed upon a billet, Chekior and gules, between a pair of cockatrices clad motley like a fool's, their feathers each dimidiated, with a tree eradicated, limbed and fructed counter company. And those are the arms that belong to me. Ta-da.
That was great. Brings a smile to my face. So.
Yes, well.
And obviously in the comments, everyone was very happy by that too.
Well, fun fact, later on that exact armory was registered to Master Baldwin of Erebor without his knowledge. Essentially, the College of Arms decided, well, we just can't let this slide. They wrote it up, they published it, they printed it, they registered it, and in the registration it said, it's really not impossible, it can be done, it's true. And now the arms you blazoned have been registered to you. There's a moral there somewhere, but I'm not sure what.
Oh my gosh. Well, I believe Mr. Bjorn would like to come in and have a little comment for you. Let's send you on your way this evening.
I had the pleasure of meeting Baldwin of Erebor, I want to say in the early 90s. It was before you had taken Laurel. It was during your immediate predecessor was Daoud, I believe.
Yeah, yes.
So that would have been 90, I think. Anyway,
yeah.
And so that's the first time I heard the song and the grumbling about the actual the heraldry itself. And so it's so good to know that decades on we can still enjoy. I mean, what doesn't this do for people who love cockatrices, really?
I know. I mean, and who doesn't love cockatrices?
Exactly.
I'm a huge fan.
There it is. All right, there it is. I mean, really. I mean, you know, some people like basilisks, but give me the cockatrice to get the job done. Let me tell you.
Mm-hmm.
I've been called one, actually.
I think you misheard, Laertes.
That was some term. I'm sure it was heraldic.
So a similar term, I'm sure. Yeah, something.
Anyway, on that note, it was such a pleasure to see you. And good to see you're doing well. And
staying healthy. I was tested for the COVID thing just last week, and I'm still negative.
Oh, well, that's good news. So.
I think so too.
All righty. Well, say hello to your lovely lady.
Yes, please do.
Yes, and say hello to yours. And everyone have a wonderful, wonderful evening. Stay safe, stay warm, and we'll next year in Jerusalem.
We'll see you around, Master Bruce. Thank you again.
Take care.
Wow, that was great. So
since his voice has been a part of my life as long as it has been, there's just something very comforting about how sonorous Bruce's voice is, whether he's singing or if he's just speaking, or I will say this phrase or this word rather, and I hope no one gets offended, pontificating. It is always nice to hear. And it's just a sense of comfort, I think, really. Or at least it has been for as long as I've known him. And it was wonderful that he was able to perform for us, because I don't think people hear him perform enough. No. He's always doing something else, but he really is a fine performer.
Yes, he is amazing, very talented. He actually provided the musical accompaniment for my Pelican procession so many years ago. And yes, he's a good friend. So, that's our show. So what do we have coming next week? Well, I'll tell you. So based on the success we had and the very good feedback we got from the viewers with the discussion we had with the Secretary of the Order of the Laurel last week, this coming Monday, we have Mistress Mary, the Secretary to the Order of the Pelican. So if you've wondered about the deep, dark mysteries of Pelican meetings, feel free to join us. We'll get some good information, perhaps some insight on how the order works, what letters do, how the discussions go, how votes are operate within the order. So that's who we're having a discussion with. Who do we have on the Bardic side?
We have our first bard from Glenavon. So Ronan will be joining us, and someone that Duchess Joan, a dear friend of mine from back home, if you will, introduced me to Ronan, who was very kind enough to want to share a Glenavon bardic point of view with us for the first time. So we're very happy that it still hasn't been a full year that we've been a show, so we may yet get all kingdoms in before our first full year. And Glenavon's going to be premiered next week.
That's awesome. All right. Well then, Bjorn, I will see you next week. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you, sir.
And everyone else, join us next week when once again we will be live from Caid. We'll see you then. Have a good night.